Welcome to I Hate James Dobson, a podcast that does advocate for premarital sex.
Oh my god, it's going to be a sex episode. Oh my god. I asked you the other day, well, we've talked about boys, we've talked about raising children, we've talked about the geese, and we've talked about women. What's left? And it never occurred to me that it would be about sex. I'm so excited for this one.
Welcome to I Hate James Dobson. I am Jake, a sex therapist and a former evangelical. I'm joined today and every day by my favorite silly slut, Brooke. Hi, Brooke.
Hi, Jake.
Brooke, how are you doing? How's your summer?
My summer has been going great because Bridgerton Part 1 has come out, and speaking of sex, I've just been watching that carriage ride over and over.
Incredible.
So far, so good.
What have you been up to other than Bridgerton since last we spoke?
Well, nothing. This is so much work. We just work all the time.
We do work a lot. And I love all of my clients.
And I love all of my clients, too.
Last month, we took a more personal route. Today, we are, unfortunately for my mental health, back to the basics, reading books by James Dobson.
No.
Today is actually the start of a 4-part series, but more on that later. We have, as you mentioned, talked about child rearing and child beating. We've talked about dutiful housewives being let out once a week and why you should trick young teenage girls. I will never get over that.
That's your favorite part.
We've talked about the need for boys to see their dad's penises. But there's something that's been missing from all of this. Brooke, can you guess what it is?
Yeah, I think it has to do with the holy bone.
You are correct. None of Dobson's works have been horny enough for me. Thankfully, that changes today. We are discussing a book released in 2010.
2010?
Bringing Up Girls.
No. I'm leaving. I thought we were talking about sex.
Uh-huh.
Oh, God.
Brooke, what do you think this book will contain?
Oh, my God. I don't think I want to know. You do this to me every freaking time. I thought I solved it. I didn't know it was going to be a... Oh, my God, Jake. I have to go.
What are your fears? What, any hopes?
Jake couldn't even say that. Jake is weeping actual tears of laughter right now. Usually it's my face.
This went so much better than I thought it would.
Oh my God. I want the audience to know that Jake pulls the book out of a backpack and reveals it to me, and that is the first time I know. Let me see this. Oh my God.
If you'll notice, my
Oh God, the eye is dotted with a flower.
Uh-huh.
Is this about virginity?
It's not about virginity.
Is this about purity culture?
Welcome to our 4-part series on purity culture.
I hate you. Oh God.
If you'll notice, I color code my tabs again. There's a whole section that's in green. It's because I ran out of every other color, and I had like 3 stacks of sticky notes only with the green left. Because I don't agree with basically anything Dobson says.
God, there's a picture of Jimmy D and Shirley on the back.
Mm-hmm.
James Dobson, Dr. Dobson is married to Shirley and is the father of 2 grown children. Wait, so this is Bringing Up Girls, and it's about purity culture, right? Okay, got it. Here you go.
So we're going to start with, as always, a quote from this book, but it's a little bit of a longer quote. I think this is a good thesis for what Dobson thinks this book is about. Quote, children are a gift from from dog.
Children are a gift from Dob.
I said dog, but...
Children are a gift from dogs. We're never going to get through this. Okay.
Quote, children are a gift from God, and we are stewards of their welfare. Training up our daughters in this sense implies helping them navigate the cultural minefields that lie in their paths, teaching them eternal values, talents, and perspectives. It means instilling in them an appreciation for truthfulness, trustworthiness, self-discipline, self-control, generosity, and sweetness of spirit.
Oh my God. And sweetness of voice like this.
It means teaching them modesty, morality, and manners. It means helping them overcome their natural inclination towards selfishness, aggressiveness, violence, and slovenliness.
Slovenliness.
That word.
Their natural inclination towards slovenliness?
Because of original sin, you see. They're naturally sinners, and sinners are inherently aggressive and violent and slovenly. It means teaching them to work and learn and think, and that is just the beginning, which is why parenthood is such a daunting responsibility, requiring careful forethought and planning. This is what we'll be talking about in the pages that follow. There's another quote that I think is a little bit shorter that really gets to the crux not only of this book but Dobson's work. Quote, "The traditional relationship between men and women is wonderful. When it is right, it works for everyone." Period.
Okay. What?
For everyone.
For everyone.
So the lack of nuance, the lack of taking into account for all these other things that we've seen throughout all of this is because if you do it right, no matter what, it will work for you. Mm-hmm. Which, again, is not ethical for any kind of clinician to make an all-or-nothing claim like that.
Right.
Because it doesn't work that way. Here's my understanding of this book's thesis. A father must protect his daughter's virginity until she finds a suitable Christian husband.
Gross.
Yep.
Gross.
Let's start with the structure of this book. 1, that there are 2 chapters dedicated to question and answer, which is an improvement from tacking them on at the end of unrelated chapters. Now there's just 2 unrelated chapters. Interestingly, there are at least 5 chapters that are largely or entirely reprinting of someone else's work or of Dobson's prior work. Which feels a little bit lazy to me, to be honest, but he does cite them. So it's an improvement over where he's come from.
He cited something?
Oh, yeah. He started putting citations in the back, which makes it easier for me to fact check his bullshit.
Oh, my God. Okay, Dobby.
Yeah.
Wait, I know we're going to talk about this, but we're only concerned about our daughter's virginity, not our son's, right?
Well, we're absolutely going to talk about that.
Right.
You notice how in bringing up boys, we didn't really talk about sex at all?
Right.
Yeah. Interesting. There is some good stuff in here, actually. Not much, to be fair, but it does exist, and I am nothing if not fair and comprehensive in my pettiness. Don't worry, we're not going to spend too much time in the good stuff. But let's start there. A little palate cleanser at the start of this. 1, some of the other people's advice is pretty good. There's a chapter that's just reprinting of a work of a guy named Harry Harrison, which is a fabulous name.
That's the best name.
It's basically just a bunch of bullet points of advice for dads about their daughters, and most of it's pretty okay.
Okay.
Generic, but, some guys need that generic advice. Things like, take part in her life now. Don't wait until she's 15 to develop a relationship.
Great.
Yeah. Never, ever make fun of her.
Great.
Yeah. Encourage her to be kind, even to the girl that nobody likes.
Well, that's nice.
Yeah. Those are all, generically good advice. That's just an entire chapter.
Yeah. My dad one time sent me an email saying, when I won an award in college, and he wrote back and he said, "We're proud of you, but remember, it's most important to always be gentle and kind." I feel like that belongs in this.
Yeah. Yeah. It speaks to a bad worldview, but the advice itself is not inherently problematic.
There we go.
Yeah.
Off subject really quick. Is this called Bringing Up Girls?
Yep.
So Bug.
Bug.
Yes.
Bug and Bub.
Yes. Okay, great.
He talks about attachment theory. And other real aspects of child development in not completely horrible ways. So here's how Dobson describes attachment theory. That children, especially babies, need to bond with their mothers in their very early years. Quote, brain development is greatly influenced and aided by the care and attention given in a nursery by mothers, grandmothers, or mother substitutes. Weird.
I thought we weren't allowed to have mother substitutes.
To me, it just makes me think of how margarine's a butter substitute. Yeah, she's not my mom, she's my margarine. As the months pass, this attachment provides a secure base that encourages the exploration of the surrounding environment. It also helps the children's style of relating to others, teaching her to trust, helps her interpret feelings, and acquaints her with intimacy. That's pretty basic, but pretty fine description of attachment theory.
Sure.
It gets a little bit weird, though. Meanwhile, Dad, quote, should begin to connect with the baby in the months to follow.
Huh.
His masculine voice, size, demeanor, and gentle discipline provide the security produced by defined limits.
Wait a minute.
Yeah, this is when it starts going off the rails.
What What discipline does a baby need in the first few months?
Well, according to Dobson, you can start spanking your kid at 18 months.
Oh, that's right.
So,
okay.
Before that, I don't know how he's defining discipline, and I don't want to know because it will make me upset.
Yeah.
But it's also specifically vague. He's right in the broad strokes, but very wrong in the specifics. Kids do need gentle, loving attention from caregivers, especially early on. He talks about something called critical periods, which are actually a developmental thing, right? When you are a little tiny baby, you are primed to learn language, and that's when you get like a native in a language. As an adult, you can learn a language, you can even be fluent in it, but it's not going to be your native language, and there's just a little bit of difference. That's a critical period. There is such a thing like that with attachment as well. If a child is abandoned early, like 0 to a year old, they're just going to have attachment issues that are specific to that period of time. They're going to have difficulty relating to other people. It's not a death sentence by any means, but Dobson says that it is. He gets into the politics of fear yet again because he can't help himself. Quote, "There are tragic cases on record of toddlers who have stood alone in the crib for hours, sick, hungry, and scared. Some of them have even grown up to be cold-blooded killers who murder strangers just for the thrill of watching them die."
This I want you to know, and we've been here before with Dobson, this gets very close to, like, adoption fear, which makes me feel like I'm going to explode.
Yeah.
And it is this idea that, like, adopted kids, which I hear people talk about all the time, grow up to be, like, sociopath and cold and drug addicts and stuff because they've all been, like, left alone in this creepy orphanage for a long time, right? Mm-hmm. And it is this weird fear-mongering thing that I don't know where it comes from, and adoption agencies have to fight really hard against it.
Yeah. I actually think it really relates to this book specifically in purity cultural general, which is this, like, sexual anxiety that specifically men have about producing their own kids, quote unquote. And any kid that's not theirs, again, quote unquote, is different or weird or never going to be quite right.
Right.
Which is fucked for so many reasons. Mm-hmm. Let's take a little caveat to talk just a little about what actual attachment theory is, because this isn't totally wrong, but it's also not totally right.
Right.
Attachment theory is what you expect in relationships. Do you think people will treat you well? Do you think that you can be hurt and it can be okay in a relationship and you can repair it, right? That's kind of what attachment is. And a big piece of it does form in early childhood, but not just your early years and also not just childhood. Your attachment can grow and change throughout your life and may vary by relationships. There's an idea called earned secure attachment, which secure attachment is when you are able to tolerate distance and discomfort, but also reunions pretty well in relationships, not distress on those bits for you, or not more than normal distress in those bits for you. I'm a person who has an avoidant attachment, which is when things get tough, I peace out.
Aww.
But in my relationship with my boyfriend, we've worked really hard to communicate and for that to not be the case, and for when things get tough for us to talk about it and turn to each other. I have a secure attachment in that relationship, even if in general I'm a little bit oriented more towards avoidance. Right? That's earned secure attachment. Dobson has no space for that in his discussion of attachment theory.
Okay. Shout out boyfriend.
Shout out boyfriend!
Yeah.
Brooke, how do you use attachment theory?
I have what's sometimes called disorganized attachment.
Yeah. What's disorganized attachment?
Disorganized attachment I like to call come here, go away. Mm-hmm. And that is anxious attachment until those needs are met, and then avoidant attachment immediately following. So wanting a lot of, like, attention or connection, and then once it arrives, not wanting it at all.
Yeah.
So I end up getting what a lot of people call the ick.
The ick. Lot. So I actually find slang like that really useful in teaching people about these psychological concepts. I have a breakdown of different attachment styles here, and a lot of it is through the lens of slang. So there's kind of two dimensions that feature into attachment, anxiety and avoidance. Secure attachment, low anxiety, low avoidance. Things can, like, feel bad, but you're not worried to talk to somebody about it, and you're able to talk about it with them. If you have high anxiety and low avoidance, you have what's called an anxious attachment style. This is what people think of as being clingy. Mm-hmm. Hey, we have a problem. Tell me about it. Do you love me? Is this okay? Like, to give me this validation.
Right.
If you withdraw and try to figure it out yourself, if you have high avoidance and low anxiety, that is me. We call those people dicks.
No, we don't.
Loners, highly functional and self-sufficient, right? Eleanor from The Good Place.
Here's an interesting tidbit that you tell me if you agree with, but I read this in some place. Anxiously attached and avoidantly attached tend to find each other and stick together because they sort of prove their own theories to each other, right?
Absolutely.
So anxiously attached people are sort of like, see, nobody loves me, nobody shows up for me. And avoidant says, see, everyone's clingy. This is where we hear a lot of like straight men who say like, my ex-girlfriend was crazy, right?
Mm-hmm.
That language.
I see this a lot in couples therapy. You get a lot of what's called pursuer-distancer dynamics.
Yeah.
The anxiously attached person will just try to get that connection and that, like, give me that validation. And the avoidant person will try to create distance. But instead of either person getting what they want, they just kind of move throughout space with the same amount of distance and everyone's a little bit unsatisfied.
Yeah. One more tidbit. Mm-hmm. I also read, I think this was in the book Attached, which... But I also read that most people are securely attached. But most people on dating websites are avoidantly or anxiously attached.
Interesting.
Because the securely attached people are in relationships. And the avoidantly attached people tend not to be. And so we find most of them online, which is why you might get ghosted a lot.
It's fascinating.
Yeah, it is. Mm-hmm.
And the last bit, last style of attachment, at least through attachment theory, is disorganized, sometimes called fearful avoidant as well.
Fearful?
Yeah.
I've also heard it called chaotic.
Yeah. And this is high avoidance, high anxiety. It's that, like, come here, go away.
Yeah. Shout out Jordan.
Shout out Jordan. Shout out mental illness.
Shout out mental illness.
Importantly about attachment theory, and this is something that I think a lot of people get wrong or misunderstand. These are patterns and trends. They are descriptive. They're not prescriptive. Right? Your astrology sign doesn't change. I'll be a Scorpio my entire life. But just because I've been avoidant in the past doesn't mean I will have to be that in the future.
And is it also true that you can have different attachment styles in different relationships?
Absolutely. It's like these things are contextual and nuanced. Another piece that's not terrible is dads do nice things for your daughters. Mm-hmm. We get to a little bit of not great places with this, but the quote is, put sweet little notes and cards in your daughter's coat pocket or in her shoe. Oh, that's sweet.
That's cute.
Write a short prayer and put it under her pillow.
Well,
I don't hate that.
Maybe.
Girls love flowers. It's in their DNA. And my note,
is that in the book?
Yeah. That's a quote from Dobson. My note is, show me the floral gene, James.
It's in their DNA.
Don't you know a girl's DNA is like daisy chained together? Yeah. It's like a flower crown.
Oh my god.
So that's the end of the good stuff.
Okay.
For context, including the intro, we're at page 4 of the script.
Nope.
It's 14 pages long.
Oh god. But I will say one time, my dad bought me some shampoo at the grocery store and he left it outside my bedroom door and taped a carnation to my door. That was really cute.
That's sweet.
Yeah.
It's not bad to give your kids gifts or to give your girls flowers. It's right. It's in their DNA. That's the part that's like, calm down.
Well, I'd also like to think that if I had a floral DNA, it wouldn't be for carnations. But okay. It was still sweet of my dad.
Lilies are nothing. So now the bad stuff.
Okay, great.
We're going to start with just some odds and ends, and then we're going to get to more of the message of the book. There's an entire chapter, again, about bioessentialism, this idea that boys and girls are fundamentally different and worlds apart because of your DNA and da-da-da-da. I'm very tired of breaking down each and every point, and so I will not be doing that this time.
Hooray!
There's some repetitive points, some are new, they're all bullshit. In general, my position on this conversation around sex and gender, there are 3 points. 1, yes, Dobson, there are differences between men and women, girls and boys.
Clearly. Even
as socially constructed as these categories might be, there are differences. I'm not arguing that. Chromosomes, hormones, brain structures, genitals, general traits, what we expect from them in society, these are all differences.
Floral genes and football genes.
God. Gender reveal parties, yeah. However, often these differences are vastly overblown and people take cultural values as biological truth. Florals are not in a girl's DNA. Boys are not hardwired to like the color blue. But people like Dobson take these cultural values and say, because it's this way now, that is how they are inherently and biologically, and that is the capital G truth, because often Jesus. In general, I don't think these categories are super useful in categorizing people. The differences between men and women in these different things, tell me more about age, the breakdown of age, or ability, or I don't know, any number of things. These can be a dimension, but I don't find it super useful. I do find it useful in a couple specific circumstances, like discussing reproductive health. It matters if you have a vagina or a penis, because one means you have to get certain types of care than the other, right?
Right.
That's an important time. Discussing gender under the patriarchy is important, right? It's forced to be important, but it changes the opportunities that are afforded to you. And having a common language to talk about your shared experiences is really useful. Feminism as a political movement is meant to benefit women, quote unquote, oversimplistically, but using women as a political category to organize it is really effective because of patriarchy. And then also for your own understanding of yourself and your own identity. I never want to take people's understanding of themselves away or identities away. But it also shouldn't, like, the fact that you're a woman shouldn't mean that you get paid less in society or have different opportunities afforded to you. It's important for you, but, like, I don't think your employer should care about that.
Right.
Weird. This has neither here nor there, but I read this quote and I just needed to not be alone with it. Children are very perceptive of power games. I remember one teacher who had no idea how to control her classroom. When she reached the end of her rope and was completely exasperated, she would climb on the desk and blow a whistle at the kids. They loved it. The ringleaders would plot at lunchtime how they could get this poor woman to blow at them. Sometimes she blew all day long.
James.
And her name was Nancy Reagan the Throat Goat.
Also, like, another one of his folksy, like, what school was he? What's he talking about?
Sometimes she blew all day long. I've been sitting with that.
Sometimes she blew all day long.
I've been reading this book for like 2 months now, and I've wanted to share that quote with you so many times.
It's so good. You have no idea how much I'm about to say that to you all the time.
I'd be bright.
Every time I have a hard day, I'll be like, you know what? Some days she just blew all day long.
Incredible. He goes on this whole tangent about how life is short and keep perspective of what matters. I'm going to read you a quote. There is no context to this quote. Former Beatle John Lennon wrote this lyric in one of his final songs. Life is what happens to you while you're busy making other plans. How little he knew. Lennon only had a few days to live. Just randomly references the assassination of John Lennon. Again, there's no context to this.
That is so bizarre. Also, that was John Lennon who said that?
I guess.
I thought it was like from Bed Bath & Beyond.
Live, Laugh, Love from John Lennon. Another just random quote. I'm reminded of what Adolf Hitler said. Your children belong to us already. What are you? You will pass on. This is in comparing to like the culture who's trying to indoctrinate your children. Again, just like...
I'm reminded of what Adolf Hitler once said.
Yeah. What is
John
that?
Lennon and Adolf Hitler on the same page? Yikes.
Seeing these quotes right next to each other has been a trip.
Yeah, that is bizarre.
We're getting to now a little bit more of the message, but this is kind of in between random stuff and the actual crux of this, which is that girls need to be taught feminine values.
Ugh.
He starts by quoting feminist icon, U.S. President John Adams.
I knew it would be funny, but I didn't know it would be that funny.
He's talking about how morals are important. This is Dobson's explanation, quote, how insightful is it that Adams placed the responsibility for the essential moral character of the nation squarely on the shoulders of mothers. So it is girls' responsibility, mothers' responsibility to make sure that we have moral people in our country.
Okay.
Which feels...
weird.
I feel like men also have responsibility there, but...
Feminist icon.
Young girls are often allowed and even encouraged to be brash, rude, crude, profane, immodest, immoral, loud, and aggressive. Some of this behavior has even been consciously taught in recent years under the rubric of assertiveness training.
Oh, yes. My mom told me about this. This was a movement, assertiveness training. And it was like a class you could go to like in the 70s. Interesting.
I don't know that much about it. I read a little bit on it for this show, but what do you know about it other than it was a class?
Just that my mom, who might be listening to this, so I'm going to maybe say, a lady once told me Yeah, that's really all I know is that it was sort of like, I might have this wrong, so sorry, people. I'm like Dobson. I use no citations. I
Exactly.
just make it all up. But I think it was like in the 60s or 70s, like during the feminist movement, that there was like classes and courses you could sign up for that would like teach you assertiveness. So it makes sense that he hates this because it's definitely tied into the feminist movement.
Yeah. But also, that was in like 60s, 70s, 80s. This came out in 2010.
Oh, yeah, right. That's right.
He says tea parties can be a great way of teaching manners. And like playing pretend with your kids can be a really great way of teaching them any number of things. How to interact socially, manners, just how to explore the world.
Also, there's nothing wrong with manners, but you can also teach your sons that.
Mm-hmm. He says that manners become morals. So we have to teach kids, especially girls, the right manners to become moral citizens.
False.
Yeah, this is dumb and bullshit. Editing Jake here, I want to make one additional point in this conversation around manners and morals, in that this logic equates politeness with being right. The Westboro Baptist Church's main sin is that they're a little bit rude about what they believe. This worldview can wipe away any criticism that isn't polite, and if you aren't even-tempered in how you deliver it, you just won't be taken seriously. Dave Griffin, voice of Jamie Barkley from Focus on the Family's Adventures in Odyssey, wrote this on his blog, quote, "I swear a shit ton, like a fuckload of swearing. I do this intentionally to disrupt people's pious meter. It is very common in evangelical circles to clutch pearls whenever anyone says fuck. This helps me weed out those who care more about surface appearances than the deeper integrity of the message. My goal is to make you uncomfortable. If it's uncomfortable for me to write the stuff I experienced, then you should share the pain. Also, one of the larger problems with evangelical circles is how people will duck the truth if you drop an F-bomb, but they will swallow a lie if you deliver it with a smile and PG language," end quote. I just resonate with this quote so much, and it's why this podcast has the tone that it does. It's also why I laugh whenever we get a one-star review saying we use too much crude language, like, yeah, Becky, that's a choice we're making, actually. That's the point of this. Back to the show. There's an entire chapter written by a former speechwriter for Reagan about how going through TSA made her feel violated and unladylike. I mean, yeah, fuck the TSA in our police surveillance state, but like, my issue is not that it makes you feel unladylike.
It makes me feel very ladylike when I go through TSA. I'm like, ooh, yeah, get in there.
So that's the random stuff. We're starting to see, he says, manners, morals, teaching our girls to be ladies. Random mentions of John Lennon's feels to me like it uncritically propagates patriarchy.
Yes.
Well, that's gross and bad. Let's turn to really the stuff that I object about in this book. And this is overwhelmingly about sex. We started the episode by making jokes about that, but there are 21 chapters in this book. 12 of them are explicitly about sex and virginity. 2 chapters dedicated to tangents about cultural decay related to sexuality, the Q&A. According to mainstream culture, quote, "Virginity results from oppression and should be gotten rid of as soon as possible. It is an embarrassment to an uninitiated girl. Some parents also feel the same way." Just like really focusing on a weird perception of what mainstream culture depicts sex to be.
Right.
And it's not great. I agree that like mainstream American culture doesn't have a good view of sex. But like, I don't think that virginity is seen as an embarrassment for an uninitiated girl.
No.
Nor that parents are like eager to have their kid go out and fuck people.
No.
I'm sure people like that exist, but that's not the mainstream consensus.
No, not at all.
About abstinence only sex education, quote, "They should explain why girls have so much to lose emotionally and physically by giving themselves intimately to guys who want nothing more than a quick roll in the hay. That to him, that should be the purpose of sex ed. To essentially scare girls away from it."
Right, because he's pro abstinence only education.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
We'll talk a lot about that in the next episode.
Which we know 100% factually is not great.
No, it does not work. It doesn't do any of the things that they want it to do.
Because it doesn't actually teach anything.
We get another reference to friend of the pod, Ted Bundy.
Oh my god. Oh my god. I love that in bringing up girls, we've already had Adolf Hitler and Ted Bundy.
And John Lennon.
And John Lennon.
Famous war criminal.
What is his obsession with Ted Bundy?
Here's a quote.
Okay.
Obscenity is highly addictive and progressive in nature. What begins as an attraction to soft-core pornography gradually changes the individual who elicits it over, leading to the ever harder and more perverse obsessions. It is what led serial killer Ted Bundy, whom I interviewed 17 hours before the execution of this Florida State Penitentiary, to murder more than 30 women and girls.
Wait, did he really reference his interview?
Yeah. It's important. It's a flex. Importantly for me, now I don't have to couch my language. I don't have to be a lawyer about it. Dobson blames Ted Bundy's serial killing on pornography.
Yeah.
That is just untrue. That is not what happened.
No.
In the past, I've tried to be like, well, he doesn't say it's pornography. That's kind of what he implies. But no, he just straight out says it here. He says, mainstream culture says that homosexuality, bisexuality, and heterosexuality are considered morally equivalent. Because they are. But also, they weren't considered that in 2010.
No.
They still really aren't now, although it's a little bit more. But
Also, a lot of people watch porn and don't serial kill.
yes.
Most people.
Not to give too much away, but we're going to talk about porn as a concept in our last episode of the series. And there's problems with it.
Sure.
But it doesn't make you a serial killer.
No,
That's not
how that works.
He talks about sex so much through the language of fear. Quote, we are doing irreparable damage to our bodies when we disobey God's moral laws in sexual relationships. In keeping with the warnings of Scripture, some promiscuous young people are dying today of AIDS or cancer. However, even those who don't die of disease often hurt themselves emotionally and may be literally killing their chances of having a happy marriage in the future.
What?
We're getting into some just real difficult, gross stuff.
Okay.
For pretty much the rest of this episode. We're on page 7 of 14.
Okay. All right.
A lot of quotes. I won't read all the quotes, but I feel
please do, because I keep loving hearing who they're from.
I think this is a little bit of a longer one, but I think this is really important. An alarming number of girls harbor deep-seated anger that is turned inward, leading them to starve themselves even to the point of death, secretly binge and purge, take prescription medications and illegal drugs, dull their senses with alcohol, cut and pierce their bodies, permanently ink themselves, engage in things like prostitution, pornography, stripping, violence, bullying, sexual aggression, lewdness, crudeness, and even attempted suicide. They all have a common thread. Why would intelligent teens and young adults, mostly girls, behave in ways that are so self-destructive? The answer, in a phrase, is self-hatred. Pause. Having anorexia and getting tattoos are not equivalent.
No, those are not the same thing.
But this idea of you hurt yourself primarily through these sexual ways because you hate yourself is kind of what Dobson is saying. Continuing this quote, we're beginning to understand how the self-hatred originates. I can't catalog the various factors in this limited setting, coward, but there is one concern that is increasingly common today, and it is early sexual promiscuity, as we've been discussing.
No.
It becomes a superhighway to depression. Anger, as we know, is a byproduct of depression. Again, no citation.
No.
A naive little girl who loses her virginity when she is, oh, so young, and then moves on to hookup culture, is vulnerable to numerous hurtful experiences.
Okay, so I want to make sure I have this right. The little girl is pure and wonderful, but then she gets accidentally sucked into sex, the world of sex. Mm-hmm. And then she gets hookup culture, and then she gets a tattoo and a nose ring and anorexia, and then she hates herself. Yes. She hates herself, and then she gets those things.
Yes.
Okay.
And often, it's because they aren't loved by their dads. Young girls who aren't loved by their dads have low self-esteem. Girls with low self-esteem look to sex as a means to fulfill that emotional hole. Hookup culture leaves them high and dry. They begin to hate themselves. And the self-hatred can lead to all sorts of bad behaviors, like getting tattoos. Mm-hmm. That is how Dobson promotes this idea of why virginity is important. It's to protect you. You shouldn't have sex before you're married, and importantly, even with a loving partner, even mm-hmm. with your long-term boyfriend in your 20s. If you're not married, you're actually doing it not because you love him. You're doing it because you're insecure and hate yourself. Mm.
My question is, we know that everything Dobson believes is because it somehow serves Dobson. So girls being virgins when they get married is important because it's better for the man? Like, what is the way that this serves Dobson?
This is such a good point. And this is kind of what we'll be talking about throughout this entire series. But a big part of it is that in this worldview, they will never admit to this, but just by virtue of what the actual impacts are, it's just that they see women as objects to serve men.
I see.
And I want my sex doll I want to be the only person who's touched my sex doll.
Right.
And I want to make sure that my kids are my kids, quote unquote.
Right. That's purity and cleanliness.
Yeah.
I think there's also a certain amount of anger that in this sort of culture, right, that like that women have power when it comes to sex. And I think part of it is because women can create life, right? And so there is this kind of like pushing down of women because, yeah, women could be, technically, right? Like if they were sleeping with a lot of people, they could be lying about that, or they could be, right? Like it strips the power a little bit. Mm-hmm. Gross.
It's gross. It also hurts men too, which is going to be a part of what we're talking about in this as well. But I want to bring it back to the book because I think there's so much interesting bullshit here. He quotes two doctors and they go on this whole little tangent, and it's weird to me. But when a person has sex with multiple partners outside of marriage, this bonding mechanism is interfered with, as he or she loses the ability to connect in the same way. A man or woman who sleeps around when they are single will often have a weaker bond with the person they marry. The illustration we give is that of a Band-Aid, and this will be familiar to anyone who has been to any level of purity culture, whether through the church or not. The first time you put it on your arm or knee, it sticks firmly. But each time you pull it off and put it back on, the stickiness gets worse until it will no longer stay in place. This is what happens in hookup culture. Those who've had sex with numerous people actually have seriously weakened their ability to bond permanently in marriage.
What?
Dobson ends this chapter, or this part at least, by saying, "I'd like to hear people try to refute the powerful argument we have just read." And my note here is, cracks knuckles, bring it on, bitch. So first, I said it's two doctors. It's two OBGYNs who are making this argument. Their evidence comes from neurology using PET scans, which is a scan of your brain. We don't have to get into all the specific details. Importantly, OBGYNs are not trained in PET scans. They're not neuroscientists. I am also not a neuroscientist, so I'm not here to critique their PET scans necessarily, but I have read a lot of neuroscience for this. These OBGYNs were interviewed by Dobson, so obviously they have some bias, and they do the same thing Dobson does that we've talked about before, where they start with a conclusion that God designed us to be monogamous because the Bible says so. Their interpretation of the Bible says so. And then they work backwards and they look for evidence to support that conclusion, which is not the scientific method. The scientific method is you have a hypothesis, but then you test it and you're open to throwing it away if it doesn't work.
Right.
They also don't cite their studies, so I'm not able to critique their specific ones, and I'm not buying their fucking book for it. So I've done my own research. In 2009, two Lithuanian researchers found that, quote, there is no significant relationship between the experience of premarital sexual intercourse and the marital satisfaction in men and women. This is consistent with other studies in the same geographical area, as well as other countries. And importantly, there are more significant predictors of relationship satisfaction, like community support, feeling emotionally on the same page, answering bids for attention, as well as 1,000 other relationship-specific variables that we can't really account for here. I would posit that the presence or absence of sex matters a lot less than the quality and meaning of the relationship to the person.
Agree. Plus, I'd like to see the study on people who have only had sex with their partner, maybe post-marriage and far into the marriage, and how bonded they are and how connected they are comparatively. Like, it's just a bullshit argument. And this thing about the Band-Aid, yeah, but okay, that's true about a Band-Aid, but it has nothing to do with sex or partnership.
A pretty famous, slightly different version of that is it's like a stick of chewing gum, where the first time you have it, it's really nice and flavorful, and then the more you chew, then it's gross and no one wants that. And that is something that I've heard women in my life was told to them, and it's just gross. No one wants to chew a ball of gum on the ground. So if you've had sex, you're chewed a ball of gum on the ground?
That's so weird.
It's when we say objectifying, it literally is saying you are this object of gum. You are this Band-Aid. Your worth is the same as an object because I can't use you then.
Yeah. Ew.
This is a little bit of a slight tangent, but he describes a Colorado ordinance as, quote, making it legal for cross-dressing men and homosexuals to use women's restrooms.
Oh, God.
And then states, quote, I'm sure the incident of molestation has increased exponentially. Again, there are no citations.
Well, yeah, how are you sure about that?
So I'm sure, because again, I'm a petty bitch. First of all, what this ordinance did is that it added sexual orientation to a list of protected classes against discrimination, including gender identity. Cis people have often assumed they're the same thing. They're not, but this laws written by cis people aren't great for the nuance of gender and sexuality. This law is more focused on housing and public accommodations. Bathrooms aren't mentioned at all in the 20 pages of this law. In the same section, Dobson says, you should know that pedophiles are usually adept at drawing children into their clutches. So just, again, this blatant confluence of queer people with pedophiles. In reality, comparing the 5 years before the law to the 5 years afterwards, Colorado reported a 0.0074% increase in the reported forcible rapes relative to population per the FBI. That's not a meaningful increase.
No.
It did not increase exponentially. And now, there's a lot of problems with that, right? I don't fuck with the FBI. I don't trust them. We also know that sexual assaults are just systemically undercounted. This was also sexual assaults general and not child specific. But if you saw sexual assaults were increasing exponentially, you would think those would be somehow reflected in the data.
Right.
Dobson doesn't cite anything. This book was released 2 years after the law was enacted, so there's already some data available, and he just ignores it.
This idea that everyone's going to get molested in the bathroom is so strange to me. First of all, you go to the bathroom with your children, right?
Usually.
Like, you don't just send a 3-year-old in by themselves. And also, like, anyone can walk into any bathroom at any time. There's not, I mean, if someone is out to do that, they'll find a way to do it. But, like, that's not, a little sign on the door isn't going to protect them.
Yeah.
Like, it's such a stupid argument. And the perverted thing that happens in a bathroom often is like camera shit,
yeah,
right? And stuff like that.
Absolutely.
And that's not because of co-ed bathrooms. That's because someone's been in there by themselves and figured that out.
Yeah. He complains about the sexualization of girls, but he both infantilizes and adultifies girls at the same time. It's not the worst quote I've read in that, like, there's more objectionable stuff, but it's the grossest to me. Quote, their turmoil is evident within an array of behaviors that make no sense to family members, friends, and onlookers. For an example, a rising incidence of eating disorders, including anorexia and bulimia, is besieging the young. 90% of those affected are girls, beginning as early as 5 or 6 years of age. Imagine that. This is the part that makes you... imagine that. Some of these tiny anorexics are still in kindergarten.
Oh my God. Oh my God.
Yeah.
Tiny anorexics.
Now, eating disorders are a real problem.
Yes.
In a variety of ways, and they can affect people of all ages, including kids younger than we think should be affected by these things. But calling them tiny anorexics, it feels like you're not taking this seriously.
I also think it debunks his earlier point that anorexia is caused from, like, sexual deviancy.
Mm-hmm.
If you're a 5-year-old. You know what I mean?
I mean, it's caused by, in his idea, like, self-hatred.
Oh.
And whatever. It's not a good argument. You were correct.
Yeah, that's not where it comes from.
Also not the most important point, but according to the American Addiction Centers, about a third of those suffering from eating disorders are men.
Mm-hmm.
And that falls to about 25% for anorexia, although it tends to be more fatal for men due to them not getting treatment because of stereotypes like this. So not only is his point bad and gross, it's also wrong in some pretty harmful ways. Again, this idea of infantilization and adultification, quote, you'd think that it's normal to dress up in a Little Miss Hooters outfit at 5 years old, or to wear a sex bracelet and discuss oral sex at 10, to flash your breasts for the cameras at 15, to get paid for anal sex at 20, to keep an Excel spreadsheet of your sexual conquests, to use abortion as birth control until menopause.
Okay. I'm not even going to talk about that. Wait, what's a sex bracelet?
This is more about my generation, actually. So in middle school, there's the silly bands.
Uh-huh.
So they're the, like, animal shapes that you would wear on your wrists. They're like some, like, cheap plastic. And the rumor was the different colors would say what different sex acts you'd be open to doing.
Oh, kind of like flagging.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like the hanky code for
Yeah.
kids. Like, that was the thing that technically existed, but it existed in the same way that Slender Man existed, where, like, I mean, kids talked about it, but also, even before that, kids were talking at 10. That's about when some kids start going through puberty. That's when I learned about, like, sexual reproduction in a meaningful way. They're going to start talking about it. It's not a sign of cultural decay.
No, it's a sign of puberty.
Yeah.
The kids talk about sex in every generation throughout all of time.
Also, the ages here feel interesting, right? 5, 10, 15, those are children. Sexualization of children is a problem in our culture and cultures around the world for sure. 20? That's an adult.
Yeah, that's an adult.
But it's lumped in together, and again, this infantilization, but also adultification.
Mm-hmm. I also am here to say that I can't cite this, but I think it's a relatively very low number of people who are using abortion as birth control.
Yeah.
Abortion's not free.
No.
It's not easy.
No, it doesn't feel good.
It doesn't feel great. And it's relatively complicated compared to other types of birth control.
I think he's counting Plan B as abortion, which it straight up is not. That is not what that is. These words have meanings, and Dobson is not using them correctly. But also, most people aren't using Plan B as birth control either.
Right.
Also, men keep spreadsheets of their conquest. A little black book has been a meme in masculinity since forever.
Right.
And he did not critique that at all in his Bringing Up Boys book. James Dobson likes Disney princesses. Do you want to guess why?
Oh, God. Because they're really young and they're all virgins.
Yes.
Yeah, and then they all find their true love and get married.
Quote, someone else is objecting to the fact that purity is making a comeback. At least, sorry, comeback.
I love it when you do a sassy James Dobson.
At least in the princess movement, and that development is disturbing to her and other liberal commentators. This is strange. I find it difficult to understand how any mother would be disturbed by her daughter's exposure to purity. Modeling virtue is one of the reasons I like the movement. In a subtle way, the Disney stories present a wholesome image of virginity until marriage and a lifelong love thereafter.
Oh my God.
It is my belief that the good outweighs the bad in the princess movement. It is certainly better than Bratz dolls or the adolescent world of Barbie.
Okay. I mean, he's got a good point. Bratz dolls are weird.
Sure.
But let me tell you something. I did a whole thing in grad school about Disney princesses. They're real fucked up.
Yeah.
Like, that's not, it's bad. Ariel was 16 and traded her voice to just like hop around on her new legs and win the heart of this other guy who didn't even recognize her when she was switched out with a sea witch. Like, this is a mess. The Disney princesses teach you that is your only worth and value.
It's very like 2010s BuzzFeed feminism.
Yes.
Is what he's responding to.
Yes.
But he's responding to it with 2010s men's rights talking points, but even dumber than that. Men's behavior is women's responsibility, according to Dobson. There's many quotes for this. We're not going to do all of them, but quote, women hold the keys to masculine behavior. Men are inclined to take what they can get and be no more accommodating than they have to be. To some degree, the lack of culture and refinement we see in many of today's men is the fault of women who ask for and get little or nothing.
Oh my God.
All the critiques of patriarchy, 1, don't exist, and 2, it's your fault. It comes down to this. The relationship between a man and a woman throughout their lives together, if indeed they do marry, will reflect the ground rules set by the woman when they were courting. She can change him then, but probably not after.
Yeah, but this all leads to the scary dark place of it's the woman's fault. All the men's behavior is the women's fault.
Yes.
Right? Which is like real dark and freaky.
2 more quotes.
Okay.
Typically, a man needs a woman more than she needs him. In fact, she can make or break him. That is why marriage is so important in a culture, because it serves to harness masculine aggressiveness for the benefit of the family. And the last one, quote, God has given women the wonderful influence, and they should use it not to manipulate or control men, but to nudge them in the direction of responsibility, commitment, and morality. It is your job as not only a mother, but a girlfriend and a wife to raise your man.
Your child man.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You made a very good point. I mean, you make a lot of good points in this, but that it does lead to this place where it is kind of a woman's fault if a man hurts her in this
right.
worldview. This book was clearly written for men and dads.
Yeah.
Whereas What Wives Wish Their Husbands Knew About Women was written theoretically for husbands. It's actually for wives. This is the first book that I've read that's clearly and explicitly written for dads.
Mm-hmm.
Quote, I believe there are many approaches to instilling healthy self-worth in girls, but it begins with the security of a loving family. Specifically, it depends on a caring and affirming father. Moms are vital in countless ways too, but self-worth for girls hangs precariously on their relationship with their dads.
False.
Your parents play a big role in that, but
sure.
Again, this bioessentialism, it's the dad that has this very specific role that means that this thing, culturally dads have a meaning, sure, but no, it's just not true. There's a chapter called Girls and Their Mothers.
Mm-hmm.
The next 4 chapters are all about men's relationship with their daughters.
Ew.
Yeah.
Also, once again, I really love that James Dobson has taken the liberty of teaching us all this when I'm like, were you a girl?
Mm-hmm.
Did you have a relationship as a girl with your mother? Because I know all about that relationship. And how can he speak to any of this?
Because he's a doctor.
Oh, right. I forgot he had that CV in his book.
Quote, the fawning attention of a father for his daughter prepares her for the uniquely feminine role as girlfriend, fiancée, and wife.
That's fucked up.
It's real fucked up.
That's getting grosser and grosser.
It's like we're sexualizing girls or something, sexualizing your daughter even. Through the lens of this book.
That's the real gross part.
Yes.
The fawning of over your dad.
Mm-hmm. The fawning of a dad for his daughter.
Ew.
Prepares her to be a girlfriend, wife, and fiancée.
Oh, God.
Quote, if there is something lacking in your relationship with your father when you were a child, the development of your femininity suffered the most. Why? As a little girl, you by nature expressed all the budding traits of the feminine gender. If your father was emotionally or physically absent, or was harsh, rejecting, or angry towards you, you automatically and subconsciously attached his disapproval to your femininity.
Wrong. Like, he just makes that up, and then he's like, or something.
I mean, to be fair, not fair, but this is very Freudian, and
sure.
A lot of Freudian stuff is like, well, it happens subconsciously, so it doesn't seem true to you, but that's because
you don't know.
You're not educated. You don't know the truth.
Yeah, you're right. It is very Freudian.
And also, the way that he's talking about this positions women that they mostly exist in their relationship to men.
Mm-hmm.
You need to be kind to your daughter, yeah, for her self-esteem, but mostly to prepare her to be a girlfriend, fiancée, wife, and a mother. Not a successful human being in the world, not a friend.
A scholar.
Not even a citizen. And I would have my own issues with that, but he doesn't even talk about, like, the patriotism element of it all.
Right. Well, yeah, because who cares what the women think?
It sets the frame for the bad kind of chivalry. Yes, it's good to respect women and be intentionally kind to your daughters, but saying all of her self-worth is dependent on you is a bit much. It also centers you, the dad, in a book ostensibly about your daughters.
Mm.
This is a theme in purity culture. It focuses a lot on women, but only as it relates to men. Much like misogyny isn't actually about women. It's actually about men.
Right. Are we going to talk about purity rings?
Let's talk about Chapter 11. Chapter 11 is called Cinderella at the Ball.
Oh my God.
This is mostly a transcribed interview with 2 people named Randy and Lisa Wilson. Randy was the National Field Director for the Family Research Council, the incredibly hateful political organization we talked about in the episode James Dobson Hates Me, the one that's like created this network of other political institutions. He was the field director for them.
I think that was the Josh Duggar organization, wasn't it?
Yeah, Josh Duggar was involved in FRC. Probably. I'll have to look into that before I publish this episode.
Yeah.
Oh, yes, he was. He was hired as the executive director of the Family Research Council Action, the lobbying arm of the Family Research Council, back in 2013. What a piece of shit. Randy and Lisa Wilson created purity balls. Have you heard of purity balls?
You have purity balls.
No, I do not. You say many things about my testicles, but pure they are not.
I've never heard of purity balls. No.
Oh my God, we're going to have a fun time with this.
I'm so scared.
So, someone wrote an article about this that they are then talking about, the person who wrote the article. In the article, this person went to a purity ball, and there were 70 young women. We're pausing just in that little bit. The original article specified that the girls in attendance were, quote, early grade school to college. Dobson fails to mention this, calling them all young women. Again, infantilization and adultification.
Right.
An early elementary schooler and a college-age student are not both young women.
No. Early elementary school is a child.
Is a baby.
Yeah, that's a little girl. Yeah. Okay.
Dressed in floor-length gowns, updos, and tiaras, they were escorted into the Broadmoor Hotel dining room by their fathers, stepfathers, and even future fathers-in-law.
Stepfathers, that's interesting.
Yeah. The first 2 hours of the gala passed like any somewhat awkward night out with parents, with the men doing nearly all the talking and the girls struggling to cut their chicken. Which, again, he's obsessed with cutting meat.
Why don't the girls know how to cut their chicken?
No. But sometime before dessert, the 63 men stood and read aloud a covenant before God, quote, to cover my daughter as her authority and protection in the area of purity. Because we know that premarital sex is especially destructive to girls, fathers play a crucial role in helping them stay pure. Dads are desperately needed to give girls and boys a strong sense of identity and confidence to help them figure out what they believe. I just don't see enough of that happening in the culture today.
Can I tell you something?
Mm-hmm.
If my dad and I went to a ball and I had a tiara and an updo and a floor-length gown and he said anything about my virginity, I would die a million deaths of embarrassment.
Yep.
This is a real thing?
Yes. It gets worse.
Okay.
This is a quote, I believe, from Randy. Purity balls about setting a standard of righteousness for their daughters and helping them develop healthy relationships. Our purpose is not about controlling girls. I believe he believes that. But you're not helping them develop healthy relationships, and you absolutely are controlling them. Your daughter's virginity doesn't belong to you or her husband.
Right. Oh, so scary. Wait, so the people who go to the ball are the daughters and the dads?
Yes.
And there's not boys there?
No.
This is so weird.
I'm going to show you pictures in just a second, but a quote from Randy about his first covenant for his eldest daughter. I, Lauren's father, choose before God to cover my daughter as her authority and protector in the areas of purity. I will be pure in my own life as a man, husband, and father. I will be a man of integrity and accountability as I lead, guide, and pray over my daughter and my family as the high priest of the home. And this covering will be used by God to influence generations to come. So the dads all stand up and make this pledge to their daughters of varying ages, including elementary school to college.
So like a 8-year-old, the dad's there talking about her virginity.
I want you to picture this. You're in a hotel ballroom. There are dads in various suits or whatever they view as fancy attire, and there are girls in floor-length ball gowns. Almost like a prom or a wedding.
Ew, ew, ew.
To symbolize that blessing, dads present swords at the cross to show the determination to protect their daughters. Then, both fathers and daughters kneel, and the girls lay white roses at the cross to symbolize wholeness and purity before God.
Did you know girls who did this?
I don't think so. Or I don't know them when they did go this, but I absolutely did know that this was a thing. Let me see if I can pull up.
Oh my God.
Yeah, this is my editorializing about this. You're giving a mock wedding ceremony about you and your daughter where you're pledging to protect her virginity until you then give her away to another man at marriage. Do you want to see some of the most disturbing pictures you'll see all day?
Yes, please.
Just scroll through this and ignore any messages that come in from other people.
These are daughters and dads?
Yep. What color are the dresses these girls are wearing?
White.
Uh-huh. How would you describe the poses that many of these people have?
Marital or prom. Oh my God. Oh my God. That's like a little girl. Oh, and you could take multiple daughters.
Yes.
And marry all your daughters. These are, and they do a dance?
Yes.
Around a cross?
I mean, every purity ball is going to differ, but yes.
There's so many American oh my God. This picture, all the girls, okay, several girls, it looks like 8, in their white gowns. They're all seem to be about the same height. They're all maybe 11. And they are carrying in a giant cross into the purity ball. Ew. Okay, this is where the rings are?
Sometimes.
Okay.
We'll talk about purity rings a little bit more.
She's sitting in a chair right in front of her dad.
Yes. It is just a wedding ceremony.
It's a wedding, but it's a power thing, right? Because it's like you marry dad.
Yes.
So then you don't want to cheat on dad.
And then the dad owns you just like he owns the wife.
Oh my God. This dad is kissing the daughter.
Mm-hmm.
But like
on the lips?
Yeah, like a romantical kiss.
I mean, that's how you seal a covenant.
Oh my God.
So Dobson interviews Randy and Lisa Wilson.
Thank you.
They created purity balls. They threw the first ones. They were employees of Dobson's. This bullshit that you are horrifyingly scrolling through pictures of would not exist without the structures that Dobson has created, without James Dobson himself.
Oh my God.
This is actually where we're going to end this episode, somewhere around here. It is this gross and creepy and awful note. This is what James Dobson advocates for. He uncritically talks about purity balls and says that they are a movement sweeping the nation. Mm-hmm. Oh, it's horrifying. Brooke is in a stunned silence showing me a picture of a dad basically just straight up making out with his daughter.
I had no idea this was a thing at all.
Yes. And it's relatively recent.
It is?
Yes.
Is this still happening?
Yes.
Do they get raided by the police?
No. In our next episode, second of 4 of episodes of Purity Culture, we're going to talk more about the history and what Purity Culture really is. But make no mistake, we would not have it if it were not for James Dobson.
Okay, I can't really look at this anymore. This is so freaky. This is like, I can't, I have nothing to say. I hate it so much.
There's nothing to compare it to. It's its own type of horror to me.
Want to hear a little nice story? You can cut it.
Yeah.
When I was 6, my dad put on a tuxedo and took me out to dinner for my birthday. And he hid little miniatures under all the coffee cups that were upside down. And he went to the restaurant before and did it. And so everybody had a little miniature under their coffee cup. And then when I was turning 16, as a surprise, he put the same tux back on and took me out to dinner to the same restaurant and hid little miniatures under all the coffee cups.
That's so sweet.
That's a good dad.
There's a way of doing something tangentially related. So the only good bits of this are it's a dad committing to protect his daughter.
Yeah.
I don't think protecting her virginity is a great way of protecting her, but establishing that relationship and having some kind of special bonding with that child. That's sweet. It's all the other bullshit on top of this that feels gross and evil and abusive.
Yes.
I don't have any specific incidents to point to, but I guarantee you there are men that have been sexually abusing their daughters who go to these things.
100%.
Absolutely. So we're going to pause here for today.
For today?
Yeah. I mean, not for us today. We have another episode to do.
Oh, right, for the fake today.
For this episode.
Oh, God. Reader of this podcast.
Reader of this blog.
Reader of this blog. You get to now go digest that information and go, take a shower and do stuff. And what you don't know is we have to stay here and record the next one. And I don't know if I'll ever unthink this. I didn't know that existed at all.
There's a reason I'm so fucked up, and it's not just the autism.
I love you.
We did recently get a very nice comment on one of our episodes where the person said, I listened to it, and at the end, you two are so sad. I hope you're taking care of yourselves. We're okay. I appreciate your concern, dear listeners.
That's sweet.
We laugh, we make jokes. It's tough to get through, but we're okay.
We're fine.
we're going to end here, but we'll pick up next week to talk more about the history of purity culture. But again, make no mistake, we would not have modern purity culture if not for James Dobson. He didn't invent this weird sense of ownership that men have over women, but his work and organizations popularized and perpetuated it, quote, at the right time. This culture is disgusting and incredibly harmful, and James Dobson specifically bears so much of the blame for it. I hate James Dobson.
I hate James Dobson.
Fuck James Dobson.
I just dissociate.
But listener, we love you, and we'll see you in the next episode. Please take care of yourselves.
I'll take care of you, Jake. We got this.
I Hate James Dobson is Labor of Love, written, recorded, edited, and produced by me, Jake. I'm honored to be joined by my amazing co-host, Brooke. If you're enjoying the show, please consider rating and reviewing it, and if you want to connect with us more, you can find us on TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube at I Hate James Dobson, and on Twitter at I Hate J Dobbs. If you want to email us, you can do so at ihatejamesdobson@gmail.com. Special thanks to Drew, Lindsay, DJ, and Jack. Our theme music is by Mood Maze, and the song is called Trendsetter. Thank you for enjoying our show.
Welcome to I Hate James Dobson. James Dobson in the back of that carriage.
James Dobson getting finger blasted in the back of a carriage.
Welcome to I Hate James Dobson. We're about to finger blast James Dobson in the back of that carriage.